I'm now joined on the line by Mr. Ayo Johnson, who is an African affairs expert, to discuss this story a bit further. Mr. Johnson, I'd like to know, your feelings at this point. When we spoke to our reporter, she said that turnout has been very high and that people are feeling a bit positive but jittery at the same time. How are you feeling at this point about the success of these elections?
Well, these elections are groundbreaking, they're historic. Clearly, Tunisians are trying to show the world that not only could they set the revolution that we've seen cut across North Africa and the rest of the Middle East, and that they can actually have credible elections. And this is just the first stage of achieving so. But there's a degree of optimism, a degree of pride, and most Tunisians around the world and those in Tunis currently are very, very optimistic that they can have credible elections and they can pave the way for their constitution to be looked at and very much for a transitional government to be put in place.
I'm glad you mentioned the Constitution there, Mr. Johnson, because, that is the sticking point at this point. I mean, the success of these elections really hinders on this one point of the appointing a new government and the rewriting of a new Constitution. Now, when we spoke to a reporter, as I said earlier, she said that many people are very skeptical at this point. Do they have the right to be skeptical?
Well, everyone's going to be skeptical, especially when you've been through 23 years of Ben Ali regime and you haven't seen a lot of hope. The people have been brutalized and there's been very little democracy. So there's that concern. But I think people have got to be hopeful that the process that's in place will see them and yield good results. And the constitution, which should hopefully be a constitution which would look at all the issues that Tunisians are concerned about, and it will evoke and include all the different parties. I mean, if you think about it, Tunisia is having over 81 different political parties, over 10,000 candidates. This is groundbreaking in itself. So being concerned about the constitution and thinking that it wouldn't take into their individual concerns is wrong. I think Tunisians have got to be hopeful.
Right, now let's talk about, the fact that Tunisia affected the entire Arab world, essentially. I mean, one Mohammed Bouazizi was able to spark revolutions that have now spread all the way to Bahrain, Yemen, etc. Now, a lot of that, do you think a lot of that, at least, depends upon the success of these elections and the proof is in the pudding type of thing?
Absolutely. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And clearly, Tunisians are trying to show not only the rest of the world, but also the other Arab countries that when you do have oppressive regimes, you can stand up, there can be a revolution, and clearly change can happen. And this is change from the bottom up. People are choosing their own leaders, making the reforms and dictating as the political parties find their way. So I think the rest of the Middle East will be looking at this very closely, and those regimes who have been oppressing their people take stock, because clearly people can revolt and change can possibly happen.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for now. We will, of course, keep a very close eye on those elections in Tunisia. That was Mr. Ayo Johnson joining us via satellite from London. Mr. Johnson, thank you very much for your insight here at Press TV. Well, you're watching the World News here on Press TV. Let's take a closer look at today's headlines. Polls open